These days, I often hear people using the word transactional to describe relationships between people and situations too. And we all understand what this means. We understand that there's a way in which we use people in a very negative and bad way. We also recognize there's a certain kind of inevitability to the way people sometimes become means to ends in our lives. Reminds me a little bit of just, buying something on the street from a street vendor. You give the street vendor some money and they give you an ice cream, and no one's expecting any big existential encounter or anything. But Martin Buber, a 20th century Jewish philosopher, was fascinated by this phenomena. He was influenced very much by the resurgence of interest in Immanuel Kant in the 1920s, and by phenomenology and existentialism too. And in 1923, he wrote a book called Ich und Du. It's translated into English as I and Thou, and it had a very deep influence on Protestant theology in the 1950s and the 1960s. Martin Buber said that the human beings are in a modal existence. There's bimodal existence. We're either in one mode or another mode. The first of these modes is described by a word pair. It's neither one nor the other, it's both together, and it's the I-it relation. And the second mode is described by another word pair, and that is I-you. So the I that we are in an I-it relation is different than the I that we are in an I-you relation. And so I-it relationships are really easy for us to understand. He said they happen in time, they're about causality, they're about using other people for our own ends, they're about, and there can be a kind of dehumanizing element to it too. Like if we lived only in the world of I-it, we would never be fully human. And one of the things he writes is he says we need at some point to be in an I-it relation in order to live, but we need to live in an I-you relation in order to truly be human. And so the I-you relation is what he calls an act of grace. It's a way that every single person, they reveal a certain part of themselves to us, and yet there's also an infinite depth to them too, a kind of beauty, a kind of wonder. We don't just experience that person, we encounter them. That person has its own independence. That person is not, we're not trying to use that person for another purpose. We just enjoy that encounter that we have with them. Buber says that in a really good marriage, that's what you see. You see both people bringing out the you in the other person. And even in a very strange little passage in the book, he writes about an encounter that he has with his own house cat. And he talks about looking into the cat's eyes and seeing and wondering if it's a response to fear or when it wants something from him, but that there's something more also, that he has experienced that I-you experience with another being, with his cat. Now, the most important I-you experience, Buber says, is the I-you experience that we have with you as the infinite you, with God. And he says the word God has been misused so terribly in history that there are people who want to just throw it out and never use it again. But he says that it refers to something that's absolutely unique. There's nothing quite like God, and that's why the word God is so important. And that's why the concept of an eternal you, a you that cannot become an it, a you that cannot be measured, a you that cannot be determined in space and time, why that you is so important. Now, I don't know where you are or what you're struggling with these days. Maybe you're struggling with the way that our modern society and modern economies tends to make everything an it. Or maybe you're struggling with the disbelief in our society where, there's kind of many atheist views are kind of a view of the world as an it with no possibility of a you. Or maybe you're concerned with your own self, that you begin to treat the people who are around you as if they're its and not as if they're yous, and not encountering them in their fullest depth. But wherever you are, my prayer is with you, that you will have this as part of your vocabulary and part of your worldview to be able to understand what is happening and to understand what really fulfills us as human beings. My name is Malcolm Clemens Young. I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral here in San Francisco, California. Thanks for watching. More good news.